Hey, everybody, and welcome to the HERstory Collaborative. My name is Jen Buck, and I'm your host here in the Collab. I'm a professional speaker, executive strategist, and author of 5 books, and a nonprofit founder. My speaking and training business is focused on advocating, activating, and amplifying high-performing women. And that's what the HERstory Collaborative is all about, trailblazing women who are changing their little corner of the world. My guest today is Rose Kaz. Having made her mark as an internationally published portrait photographer, Rose Kaz is known as the content queen amongst her all-women run production company, Rose Photo and Video, which is a boutique wedding and lifestyle photography studio in Chicago and Asheville, North Carolina. She is now transitioning from that business into a new venture. This summer, she will collectively launch her latest project, known as the Ladyboss International. Now, this is a women-forward and run business. It's an agency to work solely with women-led businesses to co-create stellar photo and video for their brands. Rose is excited to connect with all women in business and grow great networks around the world. So welcome to the collab, Rose. I'm so glad that you're here.
Thank you so much for having me, Jen. It is an honor and a privilege. I feel so excited to talk about HERstory. It's a beautiful play of words.
Thank you. Thank you. I have to tell you, I've been so impressed with you. I've gotten a chance to be a part of some of the events that you have produced, and I've watched you online. I see the impact that you have, and I was immediately attracted to your commitment to helping women with their businesses. It seems so selfless, and it's so driven by this perceived, at least on the outside looking in, this need to help women get ahead. Tell me a little bit about this new venture of yours, Ladyboss International.
Thank you, Jen. Well, I'll be totally transparent right out the gate. It is not selfless. It is almost selfish because I needed this myself when I started my business, my production company, 8 years ago now. I really felt the need to have sort of mentorship or guidance or just a general, like, I want to pull the audience, phone a friend. And I was raised by my mother, my grandmother, my great grandmother, some very matriarchal baby, now woman. And I was craving that same sort of growth and glow up, as I call it now. So that's where Ladyboss International started. And so back in those, as we say, in real life IRL moments where we were able to have panel discussions and these ways of building and trusting community, I really saw my business succeed, and I felt compelled and held and honored and cherished amongst other women. And I was at that point with my production company working more for wedding and events, but all of those women really saw me and lifted me up. And so as we pivoted to online programming, I was really blown away by the amount of women that really were seeking that exact same thing, especially during COVID and during lockdown, right?
Yeah.
And so now, as we begin to reopen and re-enter the world in what hopes to be a post-COVID era, I'm charged up by that because I want to see all women succeed, and particularly if they're interested in becoming an entrepreneur or pivoting their business or heading in a different direction. It is, as we've seen on Clubhouse stages and on interviews like this, it is incredible that just the simple thing of I see you, Lady Boss, can be like, oh, I'm able to do this. Oh, she's got my back. Oh, she has a connect. She knows somebody who may be able to help me with that bookkeeping or with that legal counsel, whatever. So it's a beautiful way of building community that has also served me since day one, just as a result of community building.
Yeah, I can relate so strongly to what you're saying. I also come from a very matriarchal family. And so the interesting thing is, it's all sisters who all had their kids. This would be my mom and her sisters, and they all had boys and me. So here we had the matriarchs in our family, the moms, the aunts, the grandmother. They were really the strong figures in our family, but I was raised with all these boys. So I was actually very aggressive. I was very competitive, very masculine, if you want to say that, in my style of communicating and my style of interacting. And I learned really quickly when I got into school that it wasn't welcome and I was too much. And so I remember my mom telling me about the first day of school, getting sent home with a note pinned to my shirt that said that I was too much and she needed to control me. And that the other little girls didn't want to play with me. So there was a message that came really early in my life that I needed to sort of back off and not be so much. And the interesting thing is, I feel like when I got into business, and I got into business young, I became a trainer really young. I was 18 years old, going to college and working at a startup that's now Discover Card, and I was given that same message over and over again. That it was,
Mm,
you can't be too much, it was more competitive. And granted, I had some great opportunities that came from women. But here's the point I'm getting at here. I am blown away at this generation of women and how they are giving a hand up to other women, because it was not that way for me. I have, yes, some great friends, and we're still friends to this day. And I have one in particular who kept opening doors for me, but it wasn't all of them. And yet I see this generation is so different. These young women realize that, all ships rise together. We all are going to get there together. And if we can do this as a whole, we're all going to be more successful. And I just love it. And it's totally what represents you as well.
yeah, absolutely. And I have to say, one of the very first panels, maybe third or fourth on the list, I'd asked this woman if she would join us on the panel, and I was always very conscious to include women from any field, from any diverse background, any shape, any size, any age, any creed. If you're a woman and you're entrepreneurial, let's talk about it, right?
Yeah.
And this woman, she said, well, I'm too old for this. Like, I've had a couple careers. I was like, you're exactly who I'd like to join the panel.
Yeah.
We have a woman who's just launching her career after having worked in corporate for 20 years. We have a
Yeah.
woman who's been in serial entrepreneur for 10, 15 years, right? And so just that varying perspective allows for us to learn from each other and see something, hear something that we can relate to
Yes.
and say, oh, okay. And I appreciate you sharing that about being told, I mean, literally with like a label on your sleeve,
Yeah.
you're a little too extra. I mean, I've been
Yep.
told that pretty much of my life. And it's
Yep.
only really been through a fair amount of self discovery work and a lot of time alone, thank you, COVID, that
Yes.
I've been able to lean into that extra. And I'm like, oh, yes, I am extra. And so is she. And so is
Yes.
she. And like, let me be your hype girl,
Yes. That's totally what it's about. So you were extra as a kid. You were raised in this strong matriarchal environment, which is awesome, because I am a believer that the matriarch is actually better at everything, period. There is no dot, dot, dot ellipses at the end. There is no question mark. It's a big fat period. I believe
Mhm.
women and the matriarchy are going to save the world. I'm a firm
Yes.
believer in that. And so growing up with that, that must have been really cool. What were you like when you were younger to have that kind of energy, as the norm around you?
Oh my gosh, I love this question so much. I have to tell you also, my screensaver is actually a picture of 6-year-old Rose, with her cute little like strawberry blonde ginger. I have like a medallion necklace. I think it's a bunny, and I'm holding that, and it's like right at my heart, and I'm holding it like it's like my best friend.
Yeah.
There looks like a pail of what I remember storing my candy in that's kind of tipped over in the back. So it's probably like cracked out on some candy that my mom said I
Yep.
couldn't have, but I had it anyway. Um, and I'm outside, like it's like me in my best form now, right?
Yeah.
And I love thinking about that age, like right, like somewhere between like 5, 6, 7. They say that's when you really activate like your sense of like, well, I'm a person, right? But this is
Yes.
also when we get taught where those pathways are really laid as far as like, oh, I'm extra. Oh, I'm, that's bad. That's good. This hurts. This doesn't.
Yeah.
I like this food. I don't. Right. And so I've been really leaning into who that 6-year-old is,
Mm.
particularly her fiery, bright, shiny. Now I know a little bit better about my sugar intake, but it's real,
Yeah.
just that like high octane,
Yeah.
high energy, like I mean hype girl as
Yeah.
a young child, and I was a tap dancer, I was in ballet. That was great, but I had more energy. So then I was playing soccer, and I was just climbing trees. I mean, still to this day, I do all of these things, but now
Yeah.
my insurance is a little bit, more
Yeah.
specific on not falling out of the tree and not, going out of network and all that fun
Right.
adult stuff. But yeah, I was pretty much firecracker.
Yeah. I think we would have liked each other a lot when we were growing up, because
I
I was
think so.
definitely all of that too. My safe place was actually in a tree. And
Hmm.
so when I needed to be alone, when I needed to get away from something, someone being a jerk, whatever it might have been, anything, it could be the dumbest thing, I was always in a tree. And it was my place to go and climb as high as I could and challenge myself, but also be alone. And I'm a total extrovert, but that was that little space that I went to, but
I
I
love
think I
that.
would have probably been very attracted to you then as well, because I was all of that, stuff too. And it's funny how the world kind of tells you what is appropriate and not, extra
Mhm.
or too much. And it's too bad because it's all of that stuff that makes all of these lady bosses the magical beasts that they are.
Oh
You know
yeah,
what I mean?
100%. Yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. And that I think is like the great unlearning, right? And I think that's what I have to give mad props to Megan O'Malley, who was in the room at our big
Yeah.
brunch today, the Boss at Brunch, because she's been really coaching me through the last 18, 19 months of like getting back to learning who that 6-year-old was. So I can be like, oh, that's actually how I feel about myself versus as we've been, you know, fairly indoctrinated. We've also agreed on our own terms to incorporate a lot of the roles of the patriarchy
Yeah.
that have women playing small. And if women
Yes.
are playing small, then the patriarchy is thriving. But if
That's
we
right.
play big, and the matriarchy can kind of swell up and say, okay, well, we're not doing it like that anymore. And that doesn't mean that we have to the patriarchy dies and the matriarchy wins. It's like, well, we can actually, that's the good part about female leadership, is that when women lead, it's good for everybody,
Yes.
not just women. And
That's right.
the patriarchy doesn't always work like that, as we have seen, right?
Yes, absolutely. And there's a book out that's called the Athena Doctrine. And in
Mm,
this book, they went to something like 46 countries and, interviewed tens of thousands of people. And they actually asked these people to look at a list of adjectives. And they said, when you see this list, what words for you, when you think of a leader, are most desirable? Now, these were men and women, and they had literally tens of thousands. And I can't remember exactly the number. It may have even been over 100,000. But anyway, these people all went through and they chose the words that they would prefer for a leader. Then they went back and took all of those words out and they gave that list of words that were chosen back to people and said, now tell us which words are ascribed to feminine leadership and which would you say are more masculine. And over and over and over again, it was feminine, 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 feminine.
mm,
And it
mm,
tells you a lot about what people want now. They want
mm,
collaboration. They don't want to compete all the time. They
mhm,
want to be empathized with, not seen as, an automaton that just has to get
mhm,
their work done
mhm,
by 5 no matter
mhm,
what, right? They want to be seen as a whole person. They want to have a whole life. They want to have relationship and connection. And, it's all about what women have been doing in communities forever, and I just think it's remarkable that you have formed your whole business around lifting women up in that space and making sure that they thrive with those partners. I just think it's incredible.
Well, thank you. It feels so inherent and so simple. This will be my third business launch, and the other, I like to say that I had business strategy, but this business plan, I've never been more excited about a piece of paper,
Yeah.
about words in order. I'm like, oh yeah, this,
Yeah.
like, I can feel it in my body, and it's so. It's also very rewarding, and I guess it really shows that this isn't a trend. This is a movement when we can have conversations like this and
Yeah.
the various stages that you and I have shared with a variety of women. It's like, yeah, okay, this is actually really happening, right?
Yeah. Right. So did you always think that you would work with women? I mean, knowing that I assume you were a girl's girl and had probably lots of friends, right?
Hmm.
Did you always think that you would be doing this, or is this something that has grown over time?
So interesting. I mean, I've, I remember thinking, at various points of my life, like I'm definitely I'm like, okay, we're doing this over here. Like, let's make the party, or I like to think of myself as the power stripped and not just the
Yeah.
power plug,
Yeah.
because I love to connect people. But
Yes.
I've always had a variety of friends, also like really old friends, really young friends,
Mhm.
really tall friends, really round friends, really men friends, and very transgender friends. Like I've
Yeah.
been able to enjoy a really colorful life of people who I feel very blessed to call close. And they say always, like, you make me feel so comfortable. Like, it's one of the biggest compliments I've received, is
Yes.
that people feel comfortable around me, which is
Yes.
great, because what I love to do is like build containers to help folks be their best self, like whether
Love.
it's stages or, my visual eye, pretty obsessive, right? Like you were very patient as I was getting my camera and my light and all of this just right. And so it's it does feel inherent that I would be doing this now. Like if I review the last 20 years of being a young woman in business, about 20 years, maybe 15. I mean, college counts, right?
Yes.
But basically into my 20s and now rounding out my 30s, it all does make sense looking back. But in each moment and each incarnation of working with like a different group, I wouldn't have seen this now. But, as they say, hindsight is
Yeah.
somebody's cheerleader. I forget. Perspective. That's right.
Yes. 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 So when it gets hard, since you're on your third business now, which is huge. When it gets hard, what's your true north? How do you stay focused? Because it's not always smooth sailing, right?
Right. I mean, exhibit COVID, right? And
Yeah.
for me, just to give a relevant topic that I'm sure we can all relate to, I was working primarily in the large corporate event and luxury wedding space with my production company.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, March 15th, 2020, all the books were cleared, right?
Yes.
And I have to be honest, I was actually excited. I was like, oh, this is awful. I'm excited. And it was a very weird feeling to be like, why are you happy about that? This is like,
Yeah.
this is awful. I'm like, yes, and I get to like really go to the drawing board, because how many times have we all said, I could never do that, I don't have enough time, or I can never do that, I just don't have enough money, or I don't have enough. And I sat with that. I charged myself, because this is the kind of terrier that I am, Jen. I was like, all right, girl, the world has given you a timeout, and you have talked about this. My undergrad is in poli-sci, so it's not that I'm like a worst case scenario gal, but I like to read about the history, which is why I, again, love the name of your podcast here as HERstory, because it's just an interesting thing to think about there, ladies and gentlemen,
yes.
and everybody. And that, sitting there March, April, May, I was like, okay, all right, a lot of deep breathing, lots of yoga, fair amount of wine. I was like, how am I going to do this? How am I actually going to do this?
Yeah.
And there's a number of books that I'm sure are on many people's shelves about everything being figure outable, and, the universe has your back, and all these like great affirmation kind of like, yes, you can. And I was like, and also I think I got to like dig into some of this and really look at, as a white woman, what my experience and privilege has been, what my training has been and what it hasn't, what I've been ingrained to believe, what is not necessarily true, and really sat with that. And that was hard and awkward. And what's beautiful about that is when we have hard, awkward moments, eventually, and I'm telling you this now as I begin to see like, what is the plan? What is the point of it all? Right. But for a while there, I was like, I actually have no idea, which is very hard to feel like we're out of control. Right. I can say anyways for myself, recovering control freak. So I think looking into oneself is where I go, because I'm like, well, yes, like last night my car got towed. That was real cute. And I was like, okay, so this is hard. And what I'd really like to do is just accomplish these few things. I can't do all of the things, because now I have to spend this time and this energy to go retrieve my blessed car.
Right.
For a lot of money.
Yeah.
But I was like, okay, let me go inside here and just check in and just like see how much energy it's worth like losing my mind over versus, taking some time and really seeing what the lesson is. And maybe the lesson is I should pay attention to signs, Rose.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. I felt afraid because my business too just went under all at once, right? All of my events for all of 2020 and all of 2021 all canceled. And we're talking about over 100 events. I mean, this was a big deal. It was scary. It was all of that. But it also, I feel, gave me a chance to pivot and do things differently and really learn the things that I'd been paying other people to do and start learning to do them myself, so that I was more self-sufficient. I was better on the pivot, able to try new things and be more exploratory with how I'd run my business. And kind of like it just ended up being this great thing. Like, who knew, that expanding the way that I did would end up working, and that's exciting in and of itself. So I want to just ask you, if you could think about what you'd like to see the next generation of women coming up, or even girls, however you want to look at that, what would you tell them that you would like to see them do even better than we're doing it?
Mm. So that's such a great question, because I'm first careful to not be like, well, young lady, because I remember as a young lady, like I was like, you can't tell me nothing. Right?
Sure,
Like
sure.
I'm just like, I'm so sure. And of course,
Yeah.
then not but 5 minutes later, I was like, oh. So I I think from the lens of always learning also. So I would love to learn from the next generation,
Mm,
not maybe try to teach them, because I feel like, again, when I was a bit younger, I was a little bit upset with older generations for leaving
yeah,
us this mess, right? And I
yeah,
can imagine for those who are graduating high school or college in the last year, like, I mean, they didn't even get to have a party, and
yeah,
the world was actually melting, and it
yeah.
and it was very evident in other things that we had perhaps swept over the rugs for years. um,
Totally.
and again, silver lining there is that I think this, I hate to use this word, but it just pops into my head, is woke, right? Like we have the most conscious
Yes,
generation on the planet right now, graduating and in school, and their eyes are fully open. There are
yes,
live streams of all of these things. There's no denying, there's no way that the history book is not
yeah.
going to include the HERstory of it. And not just for like one act, thanks Hamilton, because that was cute. I would like to see more women in like the main play, but that's okay. That's
Yes.
a whole nother
Right, right,
story,
right,
right?
right,
Her story, if you will.
right.
We're working on that. And I just, one of my favorite things that I've seen, um, with this generation of please respect my pronouns. I
Mhm.
bought my pride shirt at Target. I'm like, well, that's amazing,
Yeah.
because corporate, experience with the gay culture, you can speak how you want to speak about taking advantage of it, but it has made that culture much more socially
Yes.
acceptable,
Yes.
right? And so there's these different things that I notice. I have my cousin who's kind of like my little sister. We all grew up in that same matriarchal home at one point or another. And she's attending Loyola University. She's working as an intern for the Sun Times in Chicago. And I'm endlessly impressed with her consciousness, right?
Yeah.
And I wouldn't ever want to say that. She knows this. Like I was like, oh, I have this app. It's called Clubhouse. Please come in. She's like, oh, that's one you're teaching me. Like, she's like, I hadn't
Yeah.
heard of it. I'm like, okay, cool. One cool point for me, please.
Yes.
Um, and like, just the way of networking, the way of interacting on social media, I'm pretty darn good at it. But she, having, a good
Of course.
15 years younger than me, is just like, phew,
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, I already sent that in. I'm like, awesome, that's great.
Yeah.
She's like, oh yeah, well, I'm actually writing a feature. I was like, amazing, tag
Wow.
me in it so I can spread, share the word. And so it just, there's a inclusive and aware value that I really appreciate, and I want to interact with, and I want to encourage as young lady bosses. And that's the goal with this program, is that there's any age of woman, so that there's the cross section of the mentors and mentees. There's the exchange of community, knowledge share, and all that beautiful, beautiful
Yeah.
stuff that can
I
happen.
love it. I love it. I am a huge, huge fan of the younger generations. Huge. Like, there's no way that anybody is going to convince me that I'm seriously a Generation Xer. Like, there's no way I'm Gen X. No way. Because I just feel so much more like a millennial. All of my friends are millennials. It's the way that I sort of move through the world, but it's the youngest generation, or the Gen Z that we see right now coming up in the world. I love them, and I just might adopt that one too. I don't know, but I love the way they see the
Just
world. I'll
take
just
them
take them
all, be
all.
part of it,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to transition into some final questions, which are fun and just sort of quirky, a little bit different. They give me an idea of who you are outside of sort of the business chat and all of that. So I'm going to throw some questions at you, and you just tell me what first comes to mind. Cool?
Yes, please.
Okay. So if I gave you 1 hour to sit on a park bench with any woman from history, who
Mm.
would that woman be for you?
Oh, first I'm like, just one.
Yeah, I know. Right, 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 right.
um, I'm like getting weepy just thinking of it. So I share my birthday with Rosa Parks, and I think she would be a beautiful person to sit on a park bench with wherever she wants to be. But she also has her spirit, aside from being a fellow Aquarian with me. She embodies a natural spirit of my great grandma,
Mhm.
which is somebody else I would love to sit on a park bench with and have my head
Sure.
on her lap. Um, and maybe Rosa Parks would allow me to do that. I don't know.
Yes. Yes. That would she
But
would
I
be.
feel like I would have like a very um, like endearing granny kind of conversation with her. And I probably would ask her if it's okay for me to like speak very little, but you know how grandmas just, they're like, okay, you know, like
Yeah.
I've had respect for her as an amazing woman in the world for a long time, but I also feel like a relationship with her in like a kindred,
Nice.
I don't know,
Yeah.
spirit way.
I love that. I love that. Here's the next question. Where's your favorite place that you've ever traveled to in the world?
Ooh, Sri Lanka. One of my
Really?
very, very, very favorite places. Yes, I did a little bit of service work there with this group called Sarvodia, which is much of the country is run by NGOs, non-government organizations, because it was actually only made its own country in, I think, 1956, 1957.
Mhm.
If you look up the recent history of the place, it's a little bananas, but it is an island nation. Its people are quite short, so I feel quite tall, even though I'm only like an inch taller. But like I'm like, oh, my people, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know, island life. There's tons of surfing and
Mhm.
beautiful. They're just beautiful people and beautiful relics of
I love
times
it.
gone by. Oh, and like most of the world's tea, like it's from Sri Lanka, and actually the tea, like it, the scene actually looks like a Dr. Seuss book because
Oh,
the
wow.
shrubs, the colors, it's mind blowing, and it's just
Oh,
one of
wow.
the most beautiful places I've ever visited.
Oh, adding it to my list. Love it. Love it. I've never heard that. So that's fabulous. I mean,
Mhm.
I've never heard that it's so beautiful. All right. If you were given $1 million and you were to give it away to some NGO, who would you give it to?
Mm. Um. Oh gosh, this is a good one. Um. mm, mm, mm. So there's an organization in Asheville, North Carolina, a place where I spent a lot of my free time during COVID, and where I had another business base prior to COVID. It's called My Daddy Taught Me That, and it's a beautiful organization that brings together young Black men and teaches them to stick together, to have mentorship in the older males, and it really fosters that community that all of us need in one way or another, but
Yeah.
particularly in those families, it's really important for strong male leadership.
Love it.
And I just think My Daddy Taught Me That is, I wish there could be a branch in every city, every town.
I love it. Awesome. What's your favorite book or podcast?
Right now, in this moment, favorite book?
Yeah.
Hmm. I'm a fan of reading like 6 to 8 books at one time, which is
Oh,
ridiculous. It's bananas.
okay.
Squirrel. Um,
Yeah.
so, um, mm, mm, so many good ones. Favorite.
Any good one that you'd like to share?
Okay. So I actually I'm almost done with this one, and it's taking me a while to read because it's really dense as far as the idea, but I kind of love it. It's called Existential Kink, Carolyn Elliott, and essentially what she talks about is this culture of like abundance practice and mindfulness and all this is that's really great shit, but like really, if you haven't cleaned up your side of the street, if you haven't dug into, let's say for example, the version of 6-year-old Rose and the 30-something-year-old Rose, and like what happened there in the middle, and like
Mhm.
what did you pick up along the way that's maybe not of service, because you can like meditate until you're pink in the face and you know you're still sitting in your kaki. And so
Yeah.
this woman really encourages like a deep dive, some will call it like shadow work.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's and the other thing, it's like this big, it's not
Oh,
very
wow.
long read,
Okay.
but because I've been reading it during COVID, I'm like, that's enough of that for right now. Like I'll read like three
It's heavy,
paragraphs. I'm
huh?
like, that's good. It's
Yeah.
well, because she asks you to do a little work, and
Yeah.
so I'm a worker bee, and so even when I'm relaxing, I'm doing the work. You know.
Yep. Yep. Love it. Love it. Okay. So, what is a quirky or wacky fact that not a lot of people know about you?
Um, Good question, Jen. Okay. Gosh, I absolutely like hands down, like I will get a pedicure from this one place in Chicago. I won't go anywhere else. Like I will be a koala and be like, it's fine. And I get to see Homegirl on Monday, Juco, Chicago, like the cleanest, nicest, most beautiful place. And it's just like, it's my happy place. They do the best job. And I'm like,
Nice.
I look now at my toes. I'm like, I've been waiting
Ready to
all
climb
COVID
trees.
for this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I totally get that. Yes. Yes. Okay. So, if you could have a superpower, what would it be?
Flying.
That's a good
Yeah.
one.
My
Yeah.
favorite dreams are when I'm flying. I just love it.
Nice. Nice. I don't
Mhm.
have those. Yeah, that's a cool one. So what's your most treasured item that you have in your life?
My camera.
Oh, sure. Yeah, makes perfect sense. And when you have 50,000 women in an arena waiting for you to give your keynote, what is the theme song that you're going to walk on stage to?
Mm. It's Boss by the Carters.
Boss by the
So
Carters.
it's Beyonce and Jay-Z together. It's a new release, and it's just
Oh,
like it's just got this like good like swagger, like feels good. It's the Queen Bee, and I'm
yeah.
just like so glad that they're like not only are they back together, but they're just like doing it. Like
Yeah.
they are relationship goals to me because
100.
things are not always sunny,
Yep.
and when you can like make a lemonade record and sell it for $1 million and get right with your boo, it's like
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
100. 100. I'm going to have to look that up immediately when we're done. That's one of the things that I do after these podcasts. I always end up going in and writing down the book and writing down the songs because I want to know. I want to know all the things. So, two
yeah,
good suggestions that you gave me there.
check
So,
them out.
what is one big thing that you want to accomplish before you're done with all of this? Like, what's the biggest goal out there for you?
Mm. Another great question. Um, I want to get to the point that my superpowers, maybe not flying, but
Maybe
I
not
think,
flying.
but my ability to connect with women, to connect women to each other, to see them truly, to see them as brilliantly as they are. That what I thought was just a hobby. Now that I'm turning it into what I think is actually my dream career, I'm like putting that together. That it becomes a really seamless way of existing. And I think the reason why that excites me the most, not just because obviously living my best life and making money with my skill sets and all this,
Yep.
but like also being sure that part of that includes like doing nothing at all.
Mm,
It includes like visiting friends and having lovely long lunches and getting my toenails painted and,
mhm.
just taking care of this vessel,
Yeah.
and not maxing out because the old model that the patriarchy loves to push on that I was happy to push on with my production company and my team was just keep going, keep going.
Yeah.
And then I would have a couple months off, right? But I'm not really interested in that. I'm
Yeah.
very interested in this blow up for myself, which will
Yeah.
include down days and up days and beautiful in between valleys. And it's all part of the magic of
Yeah.
living a great life.
Yeah. Same girl, same. Everything's changed for me. I don't want to live on a plane anymore. I don't want to
Right,
do it. I'm ready
right.
for AI. I want to take on 5 keynotes in a week, and I want to go to Bora Bora, and I want to have
Ooh,
someone set up some kind of an AI studio so that I can go. You can all pay me. I'll do my thing there, have one stop, and that's good. Like I just don't want to be living in a plane anymore, and that was my life,
yeah,
hotels and
yeah.
planes. And it was for 23 years. And it's not a
Mhm,
life. It's not a living, right? So
right.
I'm right there with you. So
Mhm.
what is the best word to describe you?
Fiery.
Yay. Oh, I love that
Mhm.
word. No one's used that word in all
Oh,
my episodes. That's a good one. Yeah.
cool.
And here's the last question. Finish this sentence. When I'm really, really old, I hope to see.
Mm. I don't know why that made me so emotional. Um, all my friends and family on a regular
Mm. Oh my gosh. What a great answer. No one has said anything like that.
basis.
Oh,
I don't
that's
know.
a
It got me
great
so emotional.
That is such a great answer, and especially sort of,
Thanks.
in the space of the world that we're in right now, like that is
Hmm.
such a beautiful answer.
Thank
Wow.
you.
I absolutely love it. So, Rose, where can people find you? I just know that after this podcast, webcast, episode, I know that they're going to want to find you and be a part of you and all the great energy you bring. Can you
Mm.
just give us all the details?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So, my favorite place that you can find me right now, we've just blowed up the internet with this new URL at www.ladyboss.international. There you can see a number of folks like Jen that I've been able to spend time with virtually on Clubhouse stage, but also a lot of the women that I was able to build community with prior to COVID lockdown, where we had in-person panel discussions, which led to even bigger conversations and community and gorgeous dinner parties and fun conversations and trips and things like that, which I hope for us to get back to soon. But we're also launching what I'm super excited for all of the women to learn about is our Backstage Pass, which is essentially going to be connecting women in business all over the world. And particularly my handle in that is that I help women glow up their online presence. And so my photo and video team, previously working in events, is now working with all women owned brands. And so we're going to be connecting these brands to each other. We're basically, I know, you know what I mean when I say a Rolodex, Jen. We're
Yeah.
creating a very intentional, curated digital Rolodex.
Beautiful.
So that women can connect to each other, do a bit of skill sharing, and also actually make the money from sharing the incredible resources, gems, and wisdom that you have as a lady boss. And then for the lady boss who's just beginning her business, there will be this way to have a backstage pass into these different conversations, into these different evergreen content areas, as well as live conversations, and eventually in real life brunches, dinner parties, retreats, and all that stuff. So we're really just
Yay.
actually fusing the in real life community of Lady Boss International past to all of the amazing women that I've met in the last 6-10 months on the internet with building community with Lady Boss International.
I
So
love it.
that's the main place to find me. You can also find us on Instagram at ladyboss.international. Every Thursday, we do an incredible spotlight feature on a different woman in business doing something different in the world. So that's a fun one to tune into. And then, of course, on Clubhouse, where we met, Lady Boss International Club has rooms 2 to 3 times a day. My favorite of which we had today, the Big Boss Up Brunch that happens every other week, every other Saturday. And it's just a beautiful way for women to connect literally from your smartphone, any pocket of the world that you're in, and really collaborate, elevate, and inspire with each other.
I love it. You're such a rock star. I just absolutely love it.
Thank
And I'm a
you.
part of Backstage already. Already signed up,
Yay!
ready to go. Oh yeah.
Awesome.
Yep.
Yes.
So I'm so excited to be a part of it. I love what you're doing. I don't even know you personally, but I know parts of you because I feel like with these events and whatnot, but I like you so much. And I really
Thanks, Jen.
genuinely mean that. I think you're incredible. And I'm hitching my wagon because I just think you're going, to some really extraordinary heights.
Hmm.
And I'm excited to be a part of your circle. You know what I mean? So
Cool.
I
Thank
think you're
you. I'm
awesome.
so
And
flattered.
yeah, no, I think you're amazing. I really do. And to everybody here, thank you for watching and listening. To you, Rose, thank you for spending some time with me. I'm so grateful. Before we go, I want to make sure that I give a tip of the hat to our sponsor, who is 100 Angels. And 100 Angels is transforming communities through service, education, and comfort. And what they do is they provide populations who are in need. They provide them with physical, emotional, and spiritual support. So it might be water wells that they give, it might be clothing, it might be healthcare. This organization is doing incredible things across the Southwest. And if you'd like to get involved with them, you can check them out at 100angels.org. So again, Rose, many thanks. I am so grateful for you. And until next time, thanks
Thanks,
everybody.
Jen.
Bye-bye.